don't have them regularly throughout your day after you eat something, then something is wrong with you.
Oh, something is wrong with you. Did you hear that? Something's wrong with you. The relationship between sugar and cancer and Alzheimer's and diabetes, etc., explained by Lauren Loves Carbs.
Okay, so let's talk about the relationship between sugar and cancer.
Let's do so. I've done many a video about such a topic. I'll link one in the top right corner of the screen.
A lot of people comment on this channel and are very concerned about cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. So all of these diseases are associated with insulin resistance.
Yeah, but there's actually a more prevalent common denominator, which is mitochondrial dysfunction. Especially with respect to cancer, actually, that's a primary common denominator. Dementia is, yes, associated with the concept or construct of insulin resistance, absolutely. But what I would say is replace insulin resistance with diabetes, and there you go, because that's the actual pathology. Chronically elevated blood glucose and nothing else. All right? So that's the thing that I would say there. Same thing with Alzheimer's, because dementia and Alzheimer's, you can, in a way, for sake of brevity, think of them as the same damn thing. But for cancer specifically, that's why I gave the response that I did first and foremost. Cancer specifically is that's a mitochondrial dysfunction issue. That is the common denominator. Is mitochondrial dysfunction, a slowed rate of mitochondrial function, and one that is very difficult, ostensibly, to return to normal speeds. So yeah, there's many associative factors. Besides all of those as well, inflammation is one. Inflammation is never the root cause of anything, by the way. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Are associated with metabolic dysfunction,
Define that.
associated with inflammation and oxidative
Well, there you go, inflammation. And then oxidative stress is probably what she's going to say.
stress. A high carbohydrate, low fat diet, plant-based, with the addition of sugar.
Now, hold on a minute. With the addition of sugar, you mean, you already said sugar. You just said carbohydrates, which break down to sugar.
Is proven to reverse.
It's proven. When you talk about proof, you're necessarily, implicitly invoking epistemology. You are going to be referring to human nutrition science, which can prove hardly anything. Let's keep it PG. How about that? Okay? Proven to reverse is what she's going to say. Insulin resistance. Let's just wait to see this.
All of these symptoms.
Okay, cool. Now, let's get into some actual science, some actual grounded truths. Okay. Plants are primarily composed of fiber. Okay, cellulose. It is an indigestible sugar. Oh, did you hear that? Fiber is indigestible. Last I checked, if you can't digest something, you shouldn't be eating it. Wow, that lasted a long time, didn't it? PG rating. You should not be eating it at all. Okay? Fiber is an enteric nervous system disruptor, irritant, and over time it seems to be destructive. Okay, there's a reason why it is associated with increased mucus secretion, because mucus is upregulated in its production from irritation to tissue. Okay, that's how that happens. That's when that occurs. I feel like that's obvious. It ferments into aldehydes, which are not great to be exposed to. Alcohol ferments into butyrate, sure, a short-chain fatty acid. Guess what? The primary ketone body that is produced in ketosis. So when you quit carbohydrates and you eat like a normal, appropriate diet, rather, for human beings, is beta hydroxybutyrate. So you get the same damn thing, effectively. Okay? Great. Not to mention that that's actually used systemically throughout the body instead of a localized area, a focal part of the small intestine. So that's there you go. And well, what else do we got? I mean, seriously. Oh yeah, it's also an anti-nutrient. Yes, good. So it strips nutrition from you. We know that when soluble fiber forms that gel-like structure, not structure, but amalgam. The amalgam is made up of nutrition that you consumed as well. So there you go. Great. It also prevents the absorption in other ways of other nutrition just because it's actively inhibiting it, not just even because it's taking it with it. You could sort of think of it that way, though. So I guess I already covered it. So should we be eating a plant-based diet then if we can't digest fiber? No. The answer is no. And seriously, that one fact alone just tells you straight away that you shouldn't be eating it. Animals eat foods that they are designed to digest, that they can actually digest. Okay? Okay? Because that's really what this gets to the heart of. The animals that eat fiber, that eat plants, can digest fiber in plants. They can. Through a cecum. Now, yes, we have a cecum as well. It's extremely small, and it has an appendix attached to it. Why do we have an appendix? So anyway, next up is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are not required for human consumption. They're not. Not at any stage in life. Did you know that? No stage in life. Now, required for what? Thriving or surviving? Both. That's really that's the argument that's thrown out. Well, they might not be required for survival, but they're required to thrive. No, there's no evidence to support that claim. Okay, because how long did our genes expose themselves or have themselves be exposed to an introduction of exogenous carbohydrates throughout all of our history? Well, take a look, not even just retrospectively. We're not even talking about observational paleoanthropology. Look out in the wild right now. How frequently do you encounter simple carbohydrates? Very, 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 very rarely. Okay? So, did our genes evolve to have over the course of long periods of time to a degree that has caused full genotypic adaptations to said behavior to have an introduction of exogenous carbohydrates every single day in significant quantities? No, so it's not required for thriving then, is it? How would that make sense? Positive and negative selection pressures select for beneficial effects, a net positive effect on the organism given their circumstances. So unless you want to say that the circumstances we're in now, the deviation away from what we are evolved to genotypically withstand environmentally, somehow makes carbohydrates, exogenously speaking, beneficial now, until we get to that point, no. No. So, therefore, a plant-based, carbohydrate-heavy diet with low fat, fat being an actual essential nutrient, you need some fat, and something that we have evolved to genotypically withstand significant large amounts of on a quotidian daily basis throughout history, is contraindicated. Now, her main claim is that these actually, these ameliorate and alleviate these issues. Well, they could, because it's not just about the addition, it's about the subtraction. When you add something in, you are necessarily subtracting something else because time is finite. Time is finite. You are always replacing behaviors. Okay, you're not adding new behaviors in. Sorry, that's not how that works. You're replacing behaviors. Because again, time is finite. You haven't added new time into your day, 25 hours. No. You still have 24 hours in the day. You've just replaced the behavior that was making up a certain amount of that day with something else. So what did you subtract from that? A lot of people are adding in more absolute levels of nutrition whenever they go plant-based. Could that help? Yep. A lot of people are removing a bunch of seed oils. They're removing a bunch of other toxic industrial waste products. They're not having extremely refined carbohydrates anymore. Not to mention they're also adding fiber in, which can blunt glucose spikes and make you feel more, I guess, regular with respect to your blood glucose fluctuations, more stable in that regard. All of these things may assist in this. You're also removing a bunch of fat competing with carbohydrates or cross-inhibiting one another in a cell through the Randle cycle, which can lead to fat loss, which can also assist in the amelioration of diabetes and what you considered insulin resistance in the form that you're referring to, etc., etc., etc. Also elevated blood glucose postprandially sometimes. So glycation damage, which has implications in dementia and Alzheimer's. There's many factors at play. Does that mean that it's appropriate to consume? No. So anyway, I do want to say that these are not designed to personally insult her, but we gotta say certain things whenever it's relevant and crucial to point out. We can't just ignore what she's saying. So, and we can't be anodyne.
So, saying that sugar causes cancer is like saying.
Well, who said that? Well, unless you're talking about the people that have said so. Like I said, what we know about cancer is that it is a mitochondrial metabolic syndrome. Okay? Hence mitochondrial, because your metabolism is centered around your mitochondria. I mean, really, that's how that goes. When you study biochemistry, they will also title it, they're interchangeable, biochemistry and metabolism. They're interchangeable. And it's primarily centered around your mitochondria. What we know about cancer is that there is a slowed rate of mitochondrial function, which is necessarily coupled to inflammatory status, which has sequelae involved with that. Mitochondrial derangement seems to happen over long periods of time of sustained, continuous damage to mitochondrial DNA, because mitochondria have their own DNA. Now tell me, Lauren, does glucose have the capacity to damage mitochondrial DNA? Well, last I checked, 0.002 to 0.02% of glucose in aqueous solutions, such as your blood, such as your cell fluid, exists in its linear form, its unchained reactive form, exposing its aldehyde group. It is an aldohexose. Aldehydes, even in vastly small concentrations, like 0.002% of the overall substrate in the solution, destroy lipid rafts, tear cell membranes to pieces, bind to DNA, like mitochondrial DNA, and actively mutate it, and in a high enough concentration will just kill a cell outright. Vastly small concentrations. So, am I saying that cancer is carcinogenic? Well, it depends on what you mean. The science can't inform upon that on an observational, statistical level, but you can form an opinion about that molecule based on what I just said. To be extremely fair, because that's what I like to do with my material, there are lots of things that damage mitochondrial DNA, that have the capacity to damage mitochondrial DNA. Our mitochondrial DNA are damaged all the time, just like our nuclear DNA is. Our cells are damaged all the time. So would you say then that oxygen, for example, if we know that heart disease, to just go away from cancer, if we know that heart disease is caused by damage to arteries, does that mean that oxygen is atherogenic? You see how you got to be careful with the classification. Context matters, because obviously we need oxygen to live. So then you could say the same thing. Well, would you say glucose is carcinogenic? Well, we require glucose to live. So things get nuanced. However, what we know is that a continuous amount of damage to a heightened degree beyond and that deviates away from what our genes most evolved to genotypically withstand according to the Darwinian principles of evolution and the subsequent principles of indication, is maybe not the most conducive approach to preventing cancer and preventing heart disease and preventing all these other things that are associated with continuous damage to structures. Hence why inflammation is a necessary associated component with effectively all disease. Okay, it may not be the most appropriate approach. It's quite contraindicated. Buy now, link in the description below for paperback, hardcover, ebook, and self-narrated audiobook versions, because I'm all about authenticity. Second edition is what this is. So if you got the first edition, well, there's a lot more in this one compared to the first. So anyway, let's continue.
Is like saying water is wet.
Well, I'd like to hear how she can elaborate on that, because also water isn't wet. To be wet, just for something to be wet, it must be saturated with water. Water is water. It's not wet itself. That's not how that works. So, okay.
Sugar feeds every cell of the body.
No, that isn't true. That is false, Lauren. I did a video on this a while back explaining how sugar is actually used in cells. How is it required? It's called carb delusion exposed, by the way. I'll link it, like I said, in the top right corner of the screen. Basically, what it elucidates is that sugar is required for, if you want to be as forgiving as possible, because there's one it's not really required for the cell, but it does, the system sort of requires it to be in the cell sometimes. If you're going to be forgiving, it's 4 cells. 4 types of cells. Those are muscle cells. Those are astrocytes in the brain, not neurons. Did a video on that too. Not neurons. Red blood cells. And the one that I was talking about that's more nuanced is liver cells. They don't require it for their own function. They don't. They have a reserve of glucose in the form of glycogen, so they perform glycogenolysis, and they need glucose for that to supply glucose to other tissues of the body during, an extended fasted state or during exercise. But they themselves do not require it. So really, it's 3 cells. Now, to be fair, like I said, I am always fair. Just because it's 3 types of cells, I mean, those cells are extremely ubiquitous and important for the body. Muscles, your skeletal muscles take up 60% or so, probably more than that, of your dry mass. That's quite significant. Your red blood cells, well, I mean, that's pretty damn important. And your astrocytes in your brain, really important. So you were talking about your brain, your muscles, and your blood. Like, that's really, really damn important, to be extremely fair. but it is not true that it powers every cell of your body. The requirements are entirely aerobic, or sorry, they're entirely anaerobic, which means that if you're going to eat that should tell you something. If you eat a bunch of glucose, you're not going to engage in you're not going to engage in anaerobic glycolysis. It's not going to shift you into strictly anaerobic glycolysis. It's going to shift you in what's considered aerobic glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation. There's no such thing as actual aerobic glycolysis. It's going to shift you into pyruvate oxidation because of the shift in I to G ratio. So if the requirement for glucose and what our genes must evolve to genotypically withstand with respect to glucose utility is entirely anaerobic, wouldn't you try and avoid the behaviors that make you engage in aerobic, quote unquote, glycolysis? Because isn't that a sign that it's deviating away from what your genes evolved to withstand genotypically? I mean, the answer is it should. So no. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Cancer cells consume lots of glucose. By that logic alone, that doesn't mean to not consume glucose, by the way. That's not what that means. Okay? I just covered this recently with a consultation between myself and Ken, a member of the Carnivore Certification Program. If you haven't joined yet, you need to go ahead and do that to become a certified nutrition and fitness coach, internationally accredited. So you actually get a certificate that allows you to actually speak with medical professionals of your clients, easier to acquire insurance, all of these things. You're actually, this is the real deal. To become a fitness coach, I mean, we're certified through the National Academy of Sports Medicine and the Athletics and Fitness Association of America. This is the real deal. So if you haven't joined yet, link in the description below to get a hold of Coach Peter directly, who actually runs the thing. Been coaching for over 20 years. Now he's actually coaching coaches. So he knows what he's doing. Or you can go ahead and sign up through our website below as well. But Ken is a member of that, and then also my early access program for my own biochemistry course that will be out as soon as possible. We're going to be making the most informative, most easily understood, most robust, and elaborate biochemistry course for curious carnivores such as yourself and myself. It's for everyone, beginners, people that are extremely experienced already, whatever it may be, whomever it may be. So yeah, I just discussed this with a consultation with Ken. Yeah, that's another thing that you get in Peter's in our certification program. You actually get to speak face to face with me through consultations, to ask me questions about relevant topics. So, highly recommend it. You're doing yourself a favor and helping out the community by actually being a sensible coach. Because in order for me to be legally considered a coach, all I have to do is call myself a coach. Done. Yeah. May as well make authority mean something if people are still going to appeal to it, despite it being a fallacy.
Cancer cells and immune cells. So lower.
No, we already covered this. We already covered the cells that require glucose. Cancer cells, she seems a little frustrated, which, fine, whatever. But cancer cells consume lots of glucose. Lots of it. Her point is that, well, that doesn't matter because many cells consume lots of glucose. True. And we'll leave it at that. But the problem is believing that you should be consuming lots of carbohydrates because certain cells use glucose. That's not how that works. Also, what immune cells are you referring to? What immune cells are you referring to?
Your sugar intake lowers your immunity, and
No, that's not how that works. That is not how that works. So you've made two errors, one of which I already just mentioned before I hit play just now for the next bit of monologue. Just because certain cells require it does not mean that you need to consume it. Nor does it mean that you should consume it. And second of all, the rate at which a certain cell uses glucose is entirely dependent on the phenotype. In other words, it is entirely dependent on what the person is eating. A lot of these studies will measure, will go, oh, Well, the brain uses this much glucose per day. In what people? The ones that consume a ton of glucose? Because let me tell you, my brain doesn't use nearly as much glucose as those people studied, and I'm doing pretty damn okay. Okay?
That's the bottom line.
No, that is not the bottom line. That is an opinion that you formulated based on flawed understanding of metabolism and biochemistry, and probably statistics as well. I'm rooting for you. I am. Okay? I know that that's going to sound patronizing. I was actually discussing this with someone else. The degree to which someone perceives something as patronizing is oftentimes, if not more, is not, if not the majority of the time, due to projection, not the actual person speaking. Sometimes it can be the result of the person speaking. Yes. Perfect example. Chris McCaskill of Plant Chompers, or also known as now Viva Longevity. I can't stand that dude. Unbelievable. But other times it is a result of the person perceiving themselves as inferior in the exchange. Intellectually, physically, I mean, whatever it may be. I don't really know. Usually it's intellectually. I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want to sound that way. I am rooting for you to be correct. I'm rooting for you to formulate these opinions, at least based on some sound understanding of the fundamentals, okay? But I don't know.
Show me a study of a
Well, do you know how to interpret studies?
and that's the bottom line. Show me a study of a high carbohydrate, low fat, plant-based person that develops cancer, diabetes, kidney failure, chronic heart problems. Like,
There's plenty of those people. Not to mention, that even if that weren't true, does that mean it's the best approach? What if you could get even better than that? Because I mean, what I can tell you is, what if even if that's true, you won't develop those, which is just absolute nonsense. Just to entertain this a bit, even if you were to never, you were guaranteed to never develop those. What's the trade-off? Looking emaciated and extremely bereft of adequate muscle tissue to protect yourself from injuries, protect other people from predation, um, slowed rate of cognitive function, brittle nails and hair. I mean, what if that would people take that? Maybe some, but there's always a trade-off in that respect. Low testosterone, at least inadequate testosterone activity for their genotype. But second of all, the main point here is no. There's plenty. So appeal to ignorance fallacy. First of all, even if there aren't studies that prove this, just because it hasn't been shown in large amounts, which it has, even if it hadn't, that must mean it doesn't happen, hasn't happened, won't happen. You know, that's the fallacy. That's just ridiculous. But also, yeah, there's plenty of people that deal with issues. Okay? Plenty of them that are eating high carbohydrate, lower fat. Okay? This is ridiculous. I mean, people that are studied with longitudinal methods, when you look at the differences in mortality compared to matched control groups, which is ridiculous to even consider that control. When you convert the relative statistics that are referenced in the outcomes into absolute statistics, you're talking about changes in incidence rates of death in the tenths or hundredths of thousandths of incidents of death per person per year of follow-up. You're talking about nothing. There's no change. So, but that goes for incidence of all those diseases, by the way. Not just death, but diseases.
Give me an example in the comments of somebody.
Well, that completely misses the point for the reasons that I've already covered. This is very similar to the argument of like, well, you do this and you do that all the time. And then someone responds and goes, well, give me one example of me doing that. Sometimes on the spot, it's difficult to form an exact example or cite one, precisely because the way that humans remember things is usually they remember the feelings the emotions they felt during an exchange, during the observation of an event, whatever it may be, as opposed to the exact details of the phenomenon. You remember how you feel about watching a movie or how you felt watching a movie more than you actually remember the plot of the movie, for example, the actual details. So this is a similar example here. However, it doesn't change the fact that, yes, you still want evidence for something having occurred. So it's great. But that also assumes, her little suggestion there assumes that if there's even one person, that's reflective of the overall implication of the type of diet. Which also, just to play devil's advocate, isn't true. That's a composition fallacy. What is true of parts is true of the whole. What you want to look at is a large-scale population and then see how reproducible the results are after observing that the results were significant in one group. In terms of the differences between the disease rates incidence and in the intervention group versus the control group or something like that. Which also has its fair share of limitations. Fair share is an understatement. So what we should really look at is, okay, what did our genes most evolve to genotypically withstand? Because it wasn't this. And there's no evidence to suggest this is more beneficial than the diet that we did, or the best approximation to the diet that we did evolve to most genotypically withstand throughout history. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest the opposite, which is oftentimes gauged by appearance and presentation.
Following a high carbohydrate, low fat diet that didn't reverse the disease.
Well, again, we already covered that too. Was that due to the addition of things? Was that due to the subtraction of things? Was it due to both? Could you have gotten a better ameliorate? Could you have ameliorated it faster and to a better degree? Okay? Just because something works and has an intended result, or a net beneficial result, doesn't mean that something else could have an even greater net beneficial result. Okay? Also, is the criterion of overall health status whether your diabetes status, your heart disease status, or is it a multitude of factors, much of which a plant-based diet seems to make worse, as we were covering with the trade-off situation? This is what I mean when people try and say things like, oh well, this actually that it seems to fix diabetes, and it's like, right, okay, that's great, so it can be used for that, but what else is it doing? What else is it not fixing? Is that the best way of ameliorating diabetes? I mean, look, cutting my legs off makes me lose weight. Is that a method that I should employ to lose weight? Or are there better ones? That's my main point here. Also, are all high carbohydrate, low fat diets the same? Or are many of them different? We just recently dealt with a sugar diet craze, which was exactly that, a craze that was led by Cole Robinson, who was an absolute fraud. Covered that as well. Seems to be that it seems to be the case that well, he lied to everyone. Said that he could get a bunch of people to believe that eating a bunch of sugar was good for you, and that everyone would fall for it because they're idiots. Allegedly, purportedly, but anyway, Yeah, so we had that, which was a different high carbohydrate, low fat diet than ones like a plant based one, a typical colloquial plant based diet. So interesting.
I would love to see any kind of information that you have on that.
Well, what I would suggest is not believing the sort of composition fallacy, because even if they did provide them, you're not going to believe it because you know it's ridiculous. All right. What I would actually recommend is that you peruse the literature on longitudinal studies that have been conducted to and comparing the absolute differences between populations, understanding the limitations of these prospective cohort studies, these longitudinal studies beforehand. Um, Observe those absolute differences, and then tell me if there's any substantial evidence to suggest that plant based diets don't result in heart disease and diabetes, or at least can still be associated with them in the same degree as these other controlled populations. Controlled populations. They're not controlled, but anyway. Because whenever you do that, you see that, well, plenty of them do. That was my original point. You clearly see that the incidence rates are no different. So there you go.
So, Alzheimer's and dementia are pretty much type 3 diabetes.
There you go. Diabetes is a disease characterized exclusively and explicitly as chronically elevated blood glucose and nothing else. Lauren. So how do you get type 2 diabetes, Lauren? Well, the most conducive way is to consume a diet high in fat and carbohydrates. So you remove the fat, you can get rid of diabetes, it seems. Um, that's a reductionism to believe it's just the removal of fat, though, because what else are you also adding in? It's not just subtraction. Once again, it's also adding. You prevent glucose spikes, you prevent absolute glucose absorption when you go plant based, and remove fat subsequently. Like there's many things that change, but when you remove the fat, that's fine. When you remove the carbohydrates, same thing. Now tell me, Lauren, which one of those is actually essential for life, even according to mainstream standards and mainstream definitions of essential, which are flawed? Well, it's fat. And even according to the ADA in 2005, I reviewed that paper a while back, last year, carbohydrates are not required. And there is no deficiency disease that has been observed in any population studied for the duration of time that they've been studied that demonstrates or that is associated with an abstention of carbohydrates. Okay, your liver creates all of the carbohydrates it requires for survival and thriving. Thrival.
So, this is the cause of insulin resistance.
No. See, now what you're doing is you're framing insulin resistance as a pathology, which it isn't. Insulin resistance isn't the pathology. There's different forms of insulin resistance, and they're all, irrespective of the form, exactly what the body is supposed to do given the circumstances. What exactly is insulin resistance? If you're watching this video, you probably already know what it is. Well, let me explain. Insulin resistance is the phenomenon whereby your cells, it's really framed as if your cells sort of lose sensitivity to insulin because of dysfunction of the cell. Now, depending on the circumstances, maybe, because we do know that there is a maximum hypertrophy or a maximum size increase of cells, where once they reach that level, they can't really let any more substrate in. There's too much fat in there. But effectively, that's the same thing as the Randle cycle, which happens even whenever maximum hypertrophy hasn't been attained. Okay, it's where there's fat blocking glucose from entering because the cell doesn't require glucose at that time. And if it allowed it in whenever it didn't need it, the cell would die because glucose is toxic above a certain concentration. If it sits in a cell and isn't being immediately used, well, womp womp, it's causing damage. Okay? The insulin resistance is happening for a reason. Your body wants it to happen. Wants it to happen. That's how that works. Okay? The genes are responding to the circumstances. Too much fat in a cell beyond what we actually, or really, too much fat in a cell creating maximum hypertrophy. Well, we're going to protect ourselves from leaking and bursting, which happens actually. So we're not going to let glucose in despite how much insulin is up here. So you need more and more insulin to get things in, higher chemical pressure. Eventually, not enough. It doesn't matter how much insulin is there. Glucose isn't going to go into the cell. Okay? So that's one thing. Fat is in a cell. We don't require glucose at that time. Very similar circumstances, if not identical. But in this case, it's in the context of not maximally hypertrophied fat cells or muscle cells, whatever it may be. Well, glucose isn't going to be let in. And then finally, the other form of insulin resistance. Those two forms are considered pathological insulin resistance, which isn't pathological because it's not causing pathology. It's exactly what the genes are supposed to do given the circumstances. The other one is physiological insulin resistance, also known as peripheral insulin resistance. This is the phenomenon whereby, and it doesn't happen in everybody. Just did an interview a few months ago with Coach Stephen Thomas about this. His clients, he hasn't seen one occasion of this happening in any of his clients. So that says something. But I wrote about this in my book, actually. Contraindicated. This is the phenomenon whereby if you stop consuming carbohydrates for an extended period of time, if you are to introduce them back in on a given day, if you slip up, if you have like 100 grams or so of carbohydrates or more, you can see a spike in glucose, and then it holds, and then it goes back down. So you actually have less insulin sensitivity because the glucose level held before it went back down. Well, this is due to a few factors. Number one is the Randle cycle still. You've got fat that's being used in the cells. It's going to refuse the entry of glucose. Okay? But also, it's due to a downregulation of GLUT4 transporters that happens whenever you exhibit low levels of insulin, because GLUT4, in terms of its rate of function and in terms of its quantity in the body, in a cell, in a given cell, is dependent on insulin, not glucose levels, insulin levels. So the genes have to respond to the insulin level to start encoding for the production of GLUT4 before the blood glucose level will go back down. It happens relatively quickly, but still. And like I said, this seems to be a minority of people anyway. At least it seems that way because Coach Stephen Thomas doesn't observe anyone in his practice having this problem. They spike and then go right back down. Done. Okay, none of these are pathological. None of these are problems. None of these are diseases. The disease is chronically elevated blood glucose. And what was the root cause of that? The root cause of that was just pouring, just carbohydrates down your throat every single day, multiple times a day. That's the problem. Along with eating a bunch of fat. Okay? Even worse, having seed oils alongside that. This is called the Western diet. This is called the standard diet. All right? We're done.
They're high-fat diets.
They're high-fat and high-sugar diets, Lauren.
These are high-fat diets.
They're high-fat and high-sugar. That is reductionism.
That are causing cancer, that are causing Alzheimer's, that are causing dementia.
That are associated with it, because now we're talking about statistics. However, let's just put that aside. Yes, I believe that to be so. Fine. So we'll just be, for the sake of brevity here, fine. Okay. That doesn't change the fact that they are not in the context of low carbohydrate to no carbohydrate diets, or intake rather. Okay?
I've been blessed to have 4 grandparents in my life, and I still have one left. And I had 3 great grandmothers that I knew in my life that almost lived to 100.
Okay, that's good.
So my grandparents died from basically a heart attack,
Yep,
lymphoma, which
yep.
is cancer, and from Parkinson's.
Okay, yeah. All very, very, very common diseases that can be avoided.
So these diseases were caused by diet and lifestyle.
Yes, there's also a genotypic element to this, by the way, in terms of propensity. But yes. Now, are you going to continue being reductionist?
Which is pretty well known, but
Well accepted.
people seem to think that it's the sugar that causes cancer because when your insulin resistance, the IGF-1 goes up, and then you start to take on a lot more glucose into these cells, so they just assume that it's the sugar.
Yeah, insulin and IGF-1 do function and operate in lockstep with one another in synchronicity. I don't really know why you brought up IGF-1. Perhaps because it's a growth factor and it's associated with cancer and stuff. But anyway, yeah, so she's touching on an argument that I don't like. Um, she's rebutting an argument that I don't like. So I'm against both positions. So I just covered this in the beginning. There's a lot of carnivores that will say, well, since cancer cells use glucose in very high amounts, the solution necessarily, again, I covered this. I talked about this with Ken recently. The solution then is is cutting carbohydrates because, well, if they don't have the glucose, then they're not gonna produce they're not gonna be able to survive. Well, first of all, glutamine is involved in that process, so that's not necessarily true. However, putting that aside, is it not true that your body produces glucose? And so the cancer cells can cause the liver to just increase its production of glucose? Because the cancer cells are not foreign cells. They're not cells that sort of infiltrated and are therefore causing an immune response to kill the cells. No, 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 no. They're deranged cells that are domestic cells. So the body is going to supply them with tissue for survival. With tissue, with substrate. So it's odd. I did react to a video a while back talking about new cancer research that seemed to suggest that maybe there's a hole in that philosophy because if you add these brown fat, if you change their white fat to brown fat, you can actually get more glucose being taken up by the brown fat cells and taken away from the cancer cells. So you're actually starving them. So perhaps that's because there's an increased chemical pressure that counteracts the chemical pressure on cancer cells to take the glucose away from, to take the glucose up from themselves and not cancer cells. But still, wouldn't that just mean that the body would increase the rate of glucose production to match the needs for the cancer cells, despite the ratio being changed in favor of brown fat cells? It didn't seem to have been observed there over the duration of time that these people were studied, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't like the argument too much. Thomas Seyfried has been said that it has made the rounds for the last long time because cancer cells use glucose and all that, and I just don't. I have massive amounts of respect for him, but I'd love to have a conversation with him about this topic because it just doesn't really make sense. Maybe there's a mechanism at play. Maybe there's some theories, but anyway.
Nobody that cuts sugar out of their diet heals from cancer.
That is a load of bullshit, Lauren. I don't know where you got that from because I really hope it wasn't your asshole. That's because that's what it sounds like. That's what it looks like to me. There are plenty of people that have actually reached out to me directly saying that they have had associated remissions of cancer after adopting a carnivore diet. The mechanism is unclear. To assume this would also be, you also want to be careful not to make the fallacy of the single cause, believing that there's only one factor involved. So when I say the mechanism is unclear, really what I should say is the mechanism apostrophe S apostrophe is unclear. The mechanism or mechanisms. We have no idea. No idea. The prevailing theory was glucose, glucose, glucose. Well, I just sort of exposed a hole in that regard. If you view my previous videos from a while back, you actually heard me be a lot more emphatic and passionate about that argument than I am today, because I think about these issues deeply.
Especially if they're still eating the same high fat, high protein type diet that
See? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No. Hold on. No. This is more egregious. No. I thought she was saying, oh, especially, if they add carbohydrates in and they're eating high fat and high protein, then they're not going to get ameliorations in cancer or something like that. Which I was like, see? No. She's saying people that cut carbohydrates don't fix their issues, which we covered as complete nonsense. But also she says, especially if they're continuing to eat high fat, high protein. Lauren, I don't know what subreddits you're in. I don't know what social media you are ensconced in, but this is absolute nonsense. That is just a fundamentally incorrect idea. No. I'm really sorry to hear that you have been propagandized. You've been recruited into the propagandist army of the plant-based community. This is a sad reality.
got them there in the first place.
No, that didn't get them there in the first place. That is your opinion.
So fat is the problem, and
that is your opinion. You have not brought any logic here that would suggest that that's the case.
Sugar has become the culprit,
It is the culprit. I think what you meant was scapegoat, and it's not a scapegoat. This is the culprit for most diseases. And at least it's more highly associated than things like fat and protein. And even then, is the fat and protein being consumed in the context of carbohydrates? Because then there's way too much noise. Major confounder there. Sugar is contraindicated for human consumption under basically every single circumstance. Sugar is a drug. I did a video on this as well. At this point, there's probably no more slots available for me to put videos up there. Binge my material. Binge me. Read my book to find these videos and learn more about all these things. But I did a video called Sugar is a Drug, because it is. We need to start conceptualizing it as a drug.
Sugar is the number one conspiracy of all time.
It is not. You want to talk about a conspiracy? Start talking about the promulgation, the large-scale promulgation of the lipid heart hypothesis that was covered up by the sugar industry in the 1950s and 60s, where they paid off 3 Harvard professors to falsify data, manipulate data, to make it appear as if cholesterol was causing heart disease, when actually the research suggested that sugar was causing heart disease. That was established in 2015, actually, by the Journal of the American Medical Association. One of those Harvard professors, Dr. Mark Hegsted, became the head of the USDA after that and helped to author the USDA guidelines, the dietary guidelines, for 1977 or so, which encouraged people cut out cholesterol and saturated fat from their diets because they quote unquote caused heart disease. That's where you get the food pyramid from, with the base of the pyramid being multiple servings of bread and grains a day and starches. I remember being taught that food pyramid in kindergarten in the gymnasium on a large scale projector. You know who was talking about it? It was our vice principal, who was fat. So this is what we've done to people. We've misled them egregiously.
If everybody had enough sugar in this world, and if
Well, we do. I do, or else I would be dead, wouldn't I? Wouldn't I be dead, Lauren? We have enough. You have enough sugar. You have more than enough sugar. I have enough sugar as well. You know, it's really funny. We have the same amount of sugar, roughly, going through our veins. I would suspect. We have the same amount of sugar, despite how much you consume. So the question then becomes, well, where's that sugar that you consume then? If we have the same amount coursing through our veins. Did it perhaps get converted into fat? Transmuted? Oh boy.
everybody believed that sugar was the nutrient that it is,
No, it literally isn't a nutrient. I did a video on this too. It's called Carbs Aren't Nutrients. By definition, it is not a nutrient, Lauren. It is not a macronutrient. By literal definition, it is not. Because a nutrient, in order for something to be a nutrient, it must be essential for life. Exogenous carbohydrates are not nutrients. They are not macronutrients. Therefore, they are not essential for life. In fact, once again, they are contraindicated. Okay? Okay.
we would be living in a completely different world. We would be
We definitely would be. Actually, no, we wouldn't be, because basically everyone believes that. Lauren, every single person believes that. Just replace the word sugar with carbohydrates, which are effectively synonyms, and then people will admit to believing that. They just hear sugar and they go, oh, sugar bad, but carbs are good, not understanding that they're the same thing.
in a completely different culture, society,
Not really.
and yeah, production, imagination, so many things would change. Like, the Great Wall of China was built on freaking carbs, man. Those people.
Ooh, man. Okay, this is getting theological really quickly. First of all, what else were those people doing? What else were those people not doing? What else were those people eating? What else were those people not eating? What environment did they behave in and act in versus our environment? Come on, Lauren. This is silly.
Rice. So
Also, if you're going to talk about places like Okinawa, Japan, so other Asian countries, you're talking about a lot of pork and meat, Lauren. Meat was cherished all across the globe for basically all of human history until, I don't know, the last less than a century. It was only until the 50s and 60s that we were actually told that fat and cholesterol cause heart disease and meat is bad for you. Think about that for a second. Actually think about that. I'm not even kidding. Think about that. It's been since the 50s and 60s. Now look, appeal to tradition fallacy. You don't want to make that fallacy. Okay? Appeal to tradition fallacy. If you make that fallacy all the time, you're not open to change. If things working better than other things did, kind of like what I was talking about earlier. But what it does suggest is that we should probably take a hard look if we're going to be changing traditions. I mean, that's something that is very similar to the appeal to a popularity fallacy. There's nuance between the appeal to tradition fallacy and the appeal to popularity fallacy, and they're effectively the same. They involve the same nuance, which is, listen, it's true that just because we've been doing something for ages and ages and ages, and just because the majority of people believe something or do something, that doesn't make it right. That doesn't mean something else won't work better. However, since humans are social creatures, that typically means that's the case through experimentation. So you better be pretty damn careful about changing something. So when you observe what was behind that change in the 50s and 60s, yeah, no, that shouldn't have happened. It was based on fraud, and it was based on a bunch of surreptitious behavior.
The long and the short form of the connection of sugar and cancer is like blaming gasoline for an arson fire and not the bad diet and the lifestyle and the inflammation from eating this way and the oxidative stress from eating a bad diet. It's not the
Define bad diet. It's like blaming gasoline for a fire. Well, to be fair, gasoline was one part of that, but yes, I get that. It's more like, no, that actually wasn't a good analogy on her part, because that was one reason. That was one ingredient for the fire. The other analogy, which is that's like blaming firemen for a fire, that's different, because they literally had no role to play in that fire. They actually had the opposite role, which is putting it out. That's still an ingredient in the fire. So no, not a good analogy. Um, no, the sugar actively causes damage. What is diabetes, Lauren?
person that lit the fire for the arson. It's just the gasoline. Like, this doesn't make sense, guys. It doesn't make
No, but it does make sense. We already covered that.
sense because it just isn't that way.
But it is. Again, fallacy of the single cause. It's not just carbohydrates. It's not. Seed oils too.
So limiting your sugar is limiting your immunity, is limiting
No, that is an opinion. You have no evidence to back that claim, and you have no logic to back that claim.
your lymphatic systems
What?
to get rid of these toxins in your body.
Sugar doesn't assist in that process in terms of exogenous glucose. That's not. Oh boy.
It's limiting your elimination system.
No, there's no evidence to support that claim.
All disease starts in the stomach.
That is also not true. It depends on what you mean by that, to be fair. Because yes, you could say that that goes along with what you eat, right? But still, no. Okay, but as a general claim, let's just go with that.
I am a firm believer of this, and I think most people eat their way to disease.
Okay, yes. That's why I actually was forgiving there, because I didn't know what that meant specifically.
So if you have any kind of symptom or modern disease or modern problem, I would encourage you to get a colonic. Start there.
Okay, that is, see, that's why I paused it to criticize that, because typically that is what these people believe. It's a gut microbiome issue when they say all disease starts in the gut. That's why I paused it. Now, and I was right. I was right. No, Lauren. Now you're going to be talking about a bunch of associative data, weak associative data, where they show that certain people with this profile of gut microbiota, they're healthier. So therefore, it's the gut microbiota. You need to eat this way that cultivates this gut bacteria. It's a bunch of bullshit. It is a load of bullshit. Wow. Wow. Come on, Lauren. Come on. This is nonsense. Nonsense. I hope that you see the light. I really do. We are waiting for you with open arms. Okay? We will help you in every way that we can.
Look up mucoid plaque if you've never heard of it. If you've never seen what
I haven't heard of that, actually. I have not heard of that. Let's take a look. Just for fun. Okay, so I just did a little search of that, and it seems that mucoid plaque isn't actually plaque at all. It's called that sort of as a catchy term, but it's a buildup of mucus and toxins and all these other things in the intestinal tract. What did I say about fiber in the beginning of this, Lauren? Fiber increases mucus secretion. That's actually touted as a good thing because mucus protects the gut lining. It's a silly argument. Mucus increases in production when irritation occurs. So stop irritating the gut, and you might get rid of that mucosal plaque or mucoid plaque, Lauren. It's the same phenomenon with atherosclerotic plaque. Stop damaging the arteries, and you won't get the plaque. Okay? Well, what is the best way of damaging the gut? Because when you consume animal products, everything that enters the intestinal tract is liquid, effectively. Not when you consume fiber. Fiber abrades the enteric lining. Stop damaging the gut with a bunch of things that our genes are not evolved to genotypically withstand. Hope you enjoy that. Someone should transcribe that via tablature.
Plaque looks like, today's the day. Maybe don't eat something while you're doing it, and maybe you're gonna do a really big deep dive into what's going on here, but most people are walking around with pounds of undigested matter that can...
I'm sorry, Lauren, undigested matter. You mean fiber? All right.
Continues to get reabsorbed into the bloodstream and cause all kinds of problems.
Well, perhaps that can be something that happens as the result of the mucus holding on to things. Sure. Perhaps. Now, what do you think causes a buildup of mucus? Because we already just established that one thing is involved in that.
From headaches, fatigue, etc., etc. Your skin is your third kidney. So,
all right. So okay. All right. I understand what you're saying. Not exactly the best analogy, but I get it.
if you've got rosacea, if you've got lots of freckles, if you've got sunspots, if you've
What's wrong with freckles?
acne, if you've got fungus happening in your toes, or like I don't know, but this is a obvious sign that your...
Well, fungi and all these other pathogens are a little different because a lot of them are opportunist pathogens, and it depends on the terrain in which they're in, whether they'll cause disease. That's just an established fact, even according to mainstream medicine. Bacteria are an example of this. But all of those diseases that you just covered has to do with poor terrain, if we're going to start talking about that, using that language and with respect to the microbiology realm. But it has to do with inflammation, damage to the overall system. Because inflammation is a pre-programmed response that occurs in the body when it has perceived damage to tissues or a potential invading pathogen. If we're going to anthropomorphize the body a bit by using the word perceived, but when it encounters one that your genes have evolved to sort of respond to. In fact, let me go ahead and see if that's what I said in this book. Inflammation is a pre-programmed reaction of the body when it recognizes tissue injury or a possible invading pathogen. Okay, fine. I used different wording there. But nevertheless.
Kidneys are overburdened and something needs...
Your kidneys can be overburdened by glucose. Did you know that, Lauren? Look into diabetic nephropathy. Your kidneys can be overburdened by damage to the tissues. When we talk about overburden or overburdening, what we're talking about effectively is distress. Distress is different than stress. There's a distinction between the two. The distinction is basically distress is effectively synonymous with counterproductivity. So it's a net loss of function. Okay, the work that's actually being put in is not met by an equal benefit, or a greater benefit. It's inefficiency, for example. Although inefficiency then introduces more nuance because your fat cells can become inefficient with respect to their mitochondria, and that seems to be a good thing. Brown adipose tissue kind of thing. But yeah, so really counterproductivity is counterproductive. Okay. The best way of doing that is of inducing distress is by damaging the body. So that's something.
Change in the diet, or else your kidneys will not be able to filter out the toxins properly.
Well, okay, first of all, the liver is the primary organ that is involved in this process. The kidneys are involved as well, but they're sort of secondary. But now we're back to my main point. They do their job well, unless you're damaging the body. And you're not damaging your kidneys by eating fat and protein. Sorry.
So this is why Dr. Kempner had so much success.
Walter Kempner. You know, the man who abused his patients into submission because they were so desperate to deviate away from his protocol because they were suffering? That Walter Kempner? The guy that put his patients on a diet of fruit juice and rice, and that was it. You know, not only did he just put them on that, he also refused sodium administration to them. They had hardly any sodium. They were so beyond up because of him. And yes, he abused his patients. He abused them, hit them with shoes. So, no, Lauren, no. This is not acceptable.
Why Arnold Ehret was able to do real life experiments on himself, like cut his skin and see how he healed when he ate meat, and also cut and see how the blood healed when he was fruitarian juicing.
What the does that have anything to do? The amount of confounding variables there. What else was he eating the meat with? What else was happening at that time? Was the cut the exact same? Did he cut deeper on one of them? Also, I'm sorry, what was the primary outcome variable? The viscosity of the blood? The rate of flow? Because I'll tell you what, if the viscosity was lower and the rate of flow was higher, that's indicative of not something great, because your blood's supposed to clot pretty quickly when there's an injury. That's what you're supposed to, it's called a thrombus if you have a blood clot, but you're supposed to have like some mini thrombi there. Okay? Oh boy.
These are how you find things out, is you have.
No, that is not how you find things out. Sorry. If you want to find out what we ought to be eating as a species, because we are the same species, all right, so we have one diet because every species has one diet for its speciation. Sorry, that's just how it goes. You observe observational paleoanthropology, chemical anthropology, comparative anatomy, certain elements of our biochemistry. And you study evolutionary biology as the primary prevailing scientific theory for a reason. For a reason. Okay? I mean, seriously, I think we're done. I really think we're done with this. You don't find things out by making cuts on your skin and seeing how the blood flows when you're eating a fruitarian diet versus when you're eating meat, whatever the latter means. Eating meat. What kind of meat? How was it raised? How much meat? With what? Without what? What else were you doing?
Muck around or whatever. And if you don't feel like eating meat and cutting your skin, well, then try to take that experiment at face value for what it is.
Which was nothing. Also, N of 1. 1 person. Sample size of 1.
Insulin resistance is the problem here.
No, because it is not a problem. We already covered that as well. It is not a pathology.
People not having, and people who are on keto and carnivore and say that they have 0 spikes and their insulin is so low.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Blood sugar spikes are toxic. Why do you think that whenever you spike your glucose high enough and fast enough, it is followed precipitously by a drop in glucose below your baseline, resulting in reactive hypoglycemia, eliciting you to repeat the process because hypoglycemia results in hunger, fatigue, brain fog, headaches, mood swings. It's a sign that your body, the fact that it went below baseline tells you something. When you're spiking your glucose that high, that is toxic to your red blood cells and your epithelial cells and your endothelial cells. Okay?
I'll tell you how unhealthy that is.
No, it isn't unhealthy at all. It's indicated for our physiology according to the Darwinian principles of evolution from the 4 areas that I said are best to observe. Sorry, Lauren. I don't know why you're so angry about this, by the way. It seems like you're a little jealous. Or, no, not jealous. It's not jealousy. It's not it. It's insecurity with your own positions. Because you're seeing these people fix their problems and live great lives. And it is so baffling to you that they must be lying or they must be, that can't be right. There's got to be something there. And so you're desperately scrounging for explanations. I think it's desperation.
Like, you must have blood spikes throughout the day.
No, hold on, sugar spikes, but no, you must not. Or rather, you do not need to have blood glucose spikes, nor is that indicated. Lauren, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
The problem is when your blood spikes and then it never goes down.
No, okay, that's a problem too. That's more of a problem. However, you know what I will say? The problem was the glucose, not the insulin resistance. It's the glucose you just introduced into the system. Your tolerance for something will go down when you're not consuming it. When people go stay away from carbohydrates and then they consume them again and they have a spike and then it holds, like she was just talking about, that isn't a sign to continue eating carbohydrates, reintroduce them back in. That's like saying that when you cut alcohol out and you drink it again after like a year of being sober, it takes a lot less to get you drunk. Well, therefore, you should be consuming alcohol all the time because damn, shit, bro, your tolerance went way down for it. Damn. You might want to drink all the time. You might consider that. No, what it means is to continue staying away from the damn alcohol. Stop. What is the indication for that level of metabolic flexibility in any organism? No, Lauren, sorry. That is a problem, in which case remove the glucose. But also the spikes and immediate troughs all throughout the day are also problems. Because wait until that doesn't happen any longer because you build up enough fat that you have an issue. Sorry, Lauren.
That's because of the fat coating the cells, not letting the glucose get taken in. And
okay, so you're talking about the Randall cycle. So that's, again, not the problem. The problem is the glucose you've introduced into the system. You remove the glucose, you don't have anything holding in your bloodstream. It's gone.
for energy. So it's
Hold on a minute. Use for energy. Love this argument. Anytime someone says that, red flags go, alarm bells start ringing in my head. So,
Cells not letting the glucose get taken in and used for energy.
well, yeah, because it isn't being, it does, it's not, it doesn't have to be used for energy. There's no need for it to be used for energy. It has all the energy that it needs from fat oxidation or ketone oxidation. Sorry, Lauren. Again, that's the whole point.
So it's like we really have lost the plot here.
Tell me about it, Lauren. Lots of people have lost the plot.
Most people have no idea that the food that they eat is the cause of their problems. And
That we can agree on. But you do not know what food you were talking about.
lifestyle, what are they doing? This sedentary, whatever it is, people don't do much and then complain. It's like,
Yes, that's also a problem because did our genes evolve to genotypically withstand extremely sedentary lifestyles? No. So that can cause issues. A lot of times, if you think of a deviation away from what we're evolved to withstand as a negative in terms of like mathematical signs, so that's a negative, right? Two negatives can make a positive to counteract that effect. So sedentary lifestyles, or here's a great example. Climate controlled environments. We don't need to worry about harsh winters anymore. Carbohydrates were used to fatten up before winter. Fruit season. So ding 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 ding. There's your womp womp. There you go. Well, so when people say, well, then we should be consuming simple carbohydrates through fruit season. Well, we have a negative going on, which is deviation away, which is climate controlled environments. So how do we counteract that? Well, cut the carbs completely. Never eat them. So two negatives can make a positive. You just got to be careful with the resulting positive, potentially resulting in new negatives. And then that's when you get the pharmaceutical industry. Here's a drug for this and that, and then this, and then that, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one, because this drug caused a side effect that will counteract with this one, which caused side effects that will counteract with this one, and then you're on 13 medications and you have a list of. So you got to be careful with that. But
have an answer for you if you can't really put that together.
right back at you, Lauren. Sorry.
You've become so useless. Most people don't know, like me, like I don't know how to fix I don't know how to fix a car. I am not a mechanic. Like there's a lot of things that I'm useless at, you know, like I am not.
Okay, so this is getting into a good conversation regarding the fact that people are very ignorant nowadays, and it's not to say that everyone should be an expert in everything. That's why we pay people for different services that we're incapable of engaging with ourselves, which is completely normal and natural, and completely benign, and actually the opposite of benign. It's beneficial for a society, but it doesn't excuse us from being ignorant of everything, which is basically what you see nowadays. People ignorant of the foundations, the philosophies, the values, the institutions that allow them to be ignorant of these institutions in the first place, because we have it off so well. We're so well off in the world. That's a good philosophical argument. That's a good political argument a lot of times, because the politics is the philosophical. So, yeah, no, I share your sentiment. A lot of people are very ignorant of this, and a lot of times it's not their fault because they don't have time to look into this themselves until things go really wrong, and so they're trusting people that are experts on the topic, purported to be, and then whenever the experts are failing and everything that the experts are saying you should implement into your lives are resulting are associated with a bunch of negative outcomes all across the globe, well then the pressure is put on you to you know, step it up and start learning yourself. A lot of times it's not these people's faults at all. That's how life works. We don't have time to study everything. We're not all polymaths. But that's why I do what I do. So, and Lauren is trying. I do hope she's still making content, but I hope that she sees the light, as I say. So,
I'm not trying to say that I'm this like being that has it all figured out, but I know that as the generations go on, people are getting more and more useless. Like,
tell me about it, Lauren. And I'm not saying that in a backhanded way. I'm saying like we agree. Yes. Common ground here.
the men are just not what they used to be, and the women either, you know?
Yes. Correct. I did not expect these words to come out of her mouth.
Like, we have roles for a reason, and we're different for a reason, and each of us has a strength and a place in this society, and I don't.
Oh my gosh, what is happening right now? Lauren. Good. Good. All good things that you're saying right now. Very good things. Wow.
Why we just don't fulfill what that is. So, sugar and cancer, enough's enough. It's insulin resistance that
Okay, back to this. All right, no, we covered this, so let's get going.
puts your body in a condition to, feed the cancer cells more, because I am.
Well, that even that isn't even exactly. So cancer cells feeding on glucose isn't indicative necessarily of the contraindication of consuming it. So we got to get rid of that as well.
Very sure that most of us, if not all of us, are born with the potential of cancer. Like, your body has the potential to go this way or that way.
Yes, now you're getting into a distinction between genotype and phenotype. Yes, and I get into this all the time. Nature versus nurture in a way. Basically, how you are brought up, how your genes are expressed is your phenotype. Your genotype is what genes you have to work with. But everyone has a genotypic propensity towards developing something that's either higher or lower depending on their genotype. That's how that works. That's natural selection in action. That's evolution in action.
Depending on the conditions that you put it in. What's your lifestyle like? What's your hydration like? What's your food like? What's your rest like?
Yes, good.
These are the questions you should be asking yourself, and these are the places where you should be improving upon.
Most likely, by my estimation, yes.
Do I get enough movement? Am I having enough carbs?
It's not just about the amount of movement, it's the type.
Am I not eating upon? Do I get enough movement? Am I having enough carbs? Am I?
Oh no, Lauren, no. And unfortunately, you've made your channel name Lauren Loves Carbs. No, Lauren. Now you have a reputation to uphold. Granted, you only have a little over 1,000 subscribers, which actually helps your case. But am I getting enough carbs? Yes, you are. You're always getting enough carbs. Always. The question is if you're getting too many.
Not eating fat and protein in excess.
In excess. Okay, so she's about to say in excess. Well, what's excess, Lauren? You actually require amino acids and fatty acids exogenously. Define excess.
Am I drinking enough water? And
Well, yeah, that matters, but we also have a thirst appetite that regulates that quite well.
am I getting enough rest? Am I actually resting? Or am I on my phone at night? And you know what I mean? I can go on and on with this. So it's really about lowering the free radicals in your system, lowering the oxidative stress, like low.
Okay, that's one factor. That's one factor, yes. oxidative stress can often be the result of inflammation. So not only can oxidative stress cause inflammation, but it can be the result of chronic and systemic inflammation, which plants contribute to because of their toxins. Sorry, Lauren.
The cells that are in dysregulation, and to do that is to have enough carbohydrates, to have enough.
No. Well, yes, enough carbohydrates, which is zero. But I'm saying no to your implication, which is that we should be having a ton of exogenous carbohydrates. Okay, what is your threshold? I mean, if you're someone that says Lauren loves carbs and you think that carbs are like the best thing ever, you're eating hundreds of grams a day. Hundreds of grams a day. I know that for a fact. I know that. Sorry to exhibit some arrogance here. I know that that's what you're doing.
Red blood cell production so that you can get rid of all the cells that are cancer cells, that are dysregulated, that are not functioning properly.
Right, okay. So do carnivores have any problems with red blood cell production rates? Like reticulocyte production rates, the baby red blood cells before they're matured?
So how do you do that? You need to eat enough, exercise enough, rest enough, and hydrate enough.
Yeah. Well, those are recipes. Those are pieces of the puzzle. To the puzzle, yes. I don't think you have those things situated though.
A high-fat diet promotes LDL.
Okay. Now we're on something else. LDL is a lipoprotein carrier for cholesterol that is produced by the body by certain genes that are responding to the environment in which they are placed. LDL is not the cause of heart disease. Any bit of cholesterol carried in any form, any subfraction of the lipoproteins, any lipoprotein, does not cause heart disease. Atherosclerosis occurs in atherosclerotic lesions, which are damaged sites of the vasculature. You require damage to the arteries. That's what you require for heart disease. Cholesterol is the primary component of soft plaque, the most unstable plaque, the ones that actually break off and form blood clots. Yes. But that doesn't mean that it would have ended up there if you didn't have the damage continuing to occur to your arteries over the course of decades, leading to strokes and myocardial infarctions, MIs, heart attacks. Okay, Lauren? Sorry.
This means you have more free radicals in the body.
Whoa, what? What are you talking about? No. Where did you get that from? Was it your again? Because I really hope not.
So the connection is clear to me. If it's not clear to you, maybe.
Well, okay, yeah, so it's clear to you, it's not clear to me because I actually understand this stuff, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I really am. I do hope that you see the light someday.
Do some more research. I'm just here to kind.
No, research is what scientists do in labs. You could do reviews of other people's research, and then you can assess the integrity of it and the veracity of it whenever you look at the overall system in which the thing was released and published, because that matters. Learn the system, the scientific journals, how science is actually published. Learn the structure of scientific papers. Learn statistics, so data and analysis. Learn the biases, publication bias, arbitrary selection criteria. Learn the politics of the journals. That's a good one. Learn the criteria by which certain things are to be passed when it comes to FDA approval of drugs and medicines, which is effectively the same thing. It's actually not the fault of the FDA a lot of times in that respect. I did a video on this recently about Ozempic and the lawsuits being filed against Wegovy and all that. Mainly Ozempic, though. Novo Nordisk and all that. A lot of times it actually is not their fault. A lot of times it is, but a lot of times it isn't. Trust me, look, if you read this book, you know that I'm not exactly the most trusting of the FDA, okay? But that's not the point. The point is that a lot of times it is not their fault because they can only go off of the available statistics, and statistics has so many limitations. So, anyway, okay.
Clear the air that, like, sugar's not the problem here.
Well, it's a problem. It's a contraindication in the human diet.
It's really about how much fat you're having.
No, it isn't. Although the amount of fat that you're having does matter. You don't want to overeat fat. The best way of doing that is pairing it with carbohydrates.
Like, the advertising that goes towards eating animal products.
Oh, now she's just going to espouse a complete propagandist lie, which is that the advertising that goes into the consumption of meat and animal products is somehow far, far, far more than it is with plant-based products. That may be true today, granted, because of how dead the vegan vegetarian industry is. That may very well be true now. But as if it were not, as if it was not just a few years ago, during like 2020, the exact opposite. And by the way, this is missing the main point. This is entirely missing the main point. I don't eat this way because they promote meat and animal product consumption. I don't give a what the meat industry promotes. They're probably cherry picking data too. That's what all these industries do. Okay? I'm not pretending like they don't do the same thing. That's not why I eat these foods.
They can never say that pork is healthy for you because of this, this, this. They just have some catchy sort of like pork matters or, you know, got milk. Like, no one...
So plant-based industries are completely exonerated and exculpated from this. They're completely exempt from this behavior. Good. Okay.
Doesn't say specifically why milk might be healthy for you, but the dairy industry had this beautiful campaign that I remember when I was young, and I had the magazine things, like saw it on my friends' walls with the got milk mustache.
Did I see what I thought I just saw? All right. All right. All right. Okay. All right. Just rewind my video. I'm not gonna play it again. All right.
And then on top of that, sugar has been demonized for a very long time. Sugar has been...
Well, you do realize that, what do you mean by a very long time? You mean since like the early 2000s or something? Because let me tell you, I don't know. You know what? Let's let the book tell you, Lauren. Sugar can be the willpower you need to undereat. Sugar keeps your energy up and your appetite down. These are the ads that the sugar industry in the 50s and 60s put up to promote sugar consumption. Sugar just might be the willpower you need to curb your appetite. The fat time of day. The fat time of day. That's any time you overeat, because you know fat's bad. Sugar's instant energy can slip you past. So that was just in the 50s and 60s, and then what was the craze back in the 90s? Low fat. So Lauren, what do you mean by a very long time? What is your reference point for a long time? Long is a value judgment statement, isn't it? Or a value judgment term.
Put center stage for the cause and the problems of pretty much everybody's life. But when people cut out sugar, they usually have to be in a calorie deficit to lose.
Oh! calorie deficit is hypothermia. You can't do that. That's not possible because calories are units of heat, energy, and nothing else. I'm not going to cover this today.
Weight, or they end up gaining a ton of weight because they're not in a calorie deficit.
You are not in a calorie surplus or a calorie deficit under any circumstances unless you are hypothermic or hyperthermic.
And people think that living a life with low blood sugar is good, and it's really just...
Well, hold on a minute. Who said that? No, that's not what we said. Stable blood sugar, that's good. Not low. Low is another value judgment term. Low implies too low, like inadequate levels. Do I have inadequate levels of blood glucose? Last I checked, no, I don't. What are you talking about, Lauren? This is unbelievable. This is just unbelievable nonsense.
Like I said, blood spikes are normal, and if you...
No, not a blood spike. You're talking about a sugar spike, a blood sugar spike, and also normal. Yes, they are normal because most people exhibit it. Look around you at what normal is. The question is not what is normal. The question is what is indicated. And spiking your sugar every single day is not good. It's not indicated.
Don't have them regularly throughout your day after you eat something, then something is wrong with you.
Oh, something is wrong with you. Did you hear that? Something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with me too. Yeah. Because we don't spike our blood sugar after we eat. We don't spike it and induce damage to our tissues. Yeah. Good.
This glucose goddess, you know, she's...
Glucose goddess is also not the best source of information. Let's just put it that way, okay? She tells you to eat fiber. She tells you to take her anti-spike formula. And she also believes that glucose is your primary energy source and is your preferred energy source and all these other buzz terms and buzzwords, and that you should be consuming it still. You just don't want to spike it. She is scamming people, frankly. That's what this is. It is a scam. What she sells. The anti-spike formula is a scam. Sorry. Wait till the end of this video to hear about a product that isn't a scam, because it's not.
Real uppity on the blood spikes being low and all this stuff, and
Sugar spikes.
I'm just not impressed. She actively has caffeine every day, and she will freely admit that she tries to quit coffee every single day, but she just can't do it because it tastes so good.
Well, yep, that's an addiction. And it's probably a physiological addiction as well with respect to the caffeine. Not good. What does it have anything to do with her claims about blood sugar spiking, though?
A health expert that is addicted to caffeine.
Well, hold on a minute. Just because they're addicted to caffeine, that doesn't mean that what they say is false.
How many of them are out there? A lot. I wouldn't take advice from any of them.
Okay, well, that's your opinion. And you can have that opinion, but you don't know what you're talking about, Lauren.
Like, how can you say that you are a healthy person if you are addicted to a stimulant that you require every day to function instead?
Well, she doesn't require it to function. Also, I think I already covered that.
Just having natural foods.
Well, just because something's natural doesn't mean that it's good for you. You would actually say the same thing. Meat is natural, isn't it? You know, cyanide is natural too, right, Lauren? The appeal to nature fallacy is a fallacy for a reason. That is a fallacy. And before, I can already hear the arguments in my head. Well, that's all you say. You say evolution, though. That's appeal to nature. No, it's called evolutionary biology. That isn't appeal to nature fallacy. That says that your genes are adapted a certain way, and if you deviate away from that, the more you deviate, the more risk you have of developing a problem. Okay? That's what I say. Go ahead and do what you'd like. Go ahead. There's always the possibility that adding 20 grams of carbs into your life, actually, as a species, if we all did that over the course of thousands, tens of thousands of years, we'd actually increase in stature and robustness. Go ahead and do it if you'd like. This gets into an argument between conservatism and progressivism. Not generally, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about, in this context, strictly speaking. I'm of the conservative approach. I don't want to deviate too strongly away because I see what I think all these problems that you're seeing in the normal general space of all these health problems are the result of deviating too strongly away from that standard. Other people are progressive and they want to, okay, well, let's actually experiment with this. And this study suggests that plants are whatever. Let's add some plants in. Let's biohack. Well, you can do that too. I'm not of that opinion that that's a good thing to be doing, especially when all of your inferences are based on data that is entirely noisy and it can't inform upon hardly anything at all. Statistics is something else. As Mark Twain once said, there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. He didn't pull that out of his he meant it. A lot of things being pulled out of people's today, apparently.
It's kind of ironic when you think about it. So, like, not to mention the rhetoric that goes into convincing people that, like, fruits and vegetables are bad. Like,
well, they're contraindicated for human consumption, especially considering that 99% of all that vegetation in the stores is completely man-made and didn't even exist even a few hundred years ago, Lauren. At least in terms of their current form. The ones that didn't even exist, I think you're still going back a few thousand years in that respect. But in their current form, yeah, that's because of industrialization. That's hybridization, Lauren. You think apples were as big as they were during the times of the Garden of Eden? I just bring that up because everyone thinks of the fruit in that the forbidden fruit is an apple. That's why we call it the Adam's apple or something. But it was never said to be an apple. I just think of anyway. What the whatever. Still, you think it was that? You think it was that large if it was an apple? If this ever happened, because it wasn't. Sorry.
Primal Bod had this amazing reel on carrots.
Primal Bod also doesn't seem to know what she's talking about, considering that she thinks that Wagyu beef is always from unhealthy cows fed Skittles and shit. Which, like they're diseased cows, when that's not always the case. Ever the case, I don't think. With Wagyu beef, no.
Carrots are killing you, and carrots are.
Well, that's a sensational claim, and I wouldn't have made that claim myself.
Infertility, and carrots are a toxin, and.
Well, carrots contain toxins. Yes, that is a claim that I not only would make, I have made it before. They do carry toxins that we are not genotypically evolved to withstand. Okay? Just because plants have toxins in them doesn't mean that we shouldn't be consuming them, or else herbivores wouldn't exist. No, it matters how long you've adapted to those compounds. Doesn't seem like we have not adapted. Look into oxalate dumping and tell me we've adapted to that genotypically. Silly.
It's really insane sort of rhetoric. But hey, she's charging $2,000 for her program that basically
I think it's about $3,000.
You to fast, eat meat, and have healthy fats like avocado and stuff. So, like, her program is
right. So if you actually want to join a program that gets you something that's actually of utility, like a certificate, or like, I don't know, an actual baseline education in fundamental things like the Randall cycle, cholesterol, saturated fat, and heart disease, vitamin C metabolism on carnivore, ketone metabolism, ketogenesis, gluconeogenesis, and uncoupled versus coupled mitochondria, carbohydrates during exercise and how it can affect performance, all this stuff. How to beat food addiction with features from like Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, Dr. Abs. Join our program.
0% different from any other primal keto carnivore type program. It's just
That's false. That's completely false. Glad that she brought that up because I'm going to reiterate now. Reiterate because now this is the third time I'm saying it. Join our program because you won't be disappointed. And for people that are referred to this program by myself, a lot of times they get a discount. So, anyway.
it's very high fat, very high protein, very fasting.
Define very fasting. Define very high fat, very high protein, by the way. What are your standards?
Hey, she's skinny. Yeah, but that's because she's in a calorie deficit.
No, Lauren, that is not how that works. She's not hypothermic.
Because she fasts.
You don't have to fast. I don't fast. You know that, Lauren? I don't. And there's reasons I don't. I'm trying to get to a point where I actually can. I have structural problems that are inhibiting me from actually being able to do that. But anyway.
Stopped if she ate in a surplus of calories.
You can't do that because you can't consume a calorie at all. They have no rest mass and cannot be brought to rest. They weigh nothing. You don't consume those. You consume mass and you don't really yield calories from your food. You release them through exothermic biochemical reactions that occur in the body. And you might say, whoa, where does the substrate come from to perform those chemical reactions? That's not the point. That seriously is not the point. It isn't. 70% of them are released and 30% of them are encapsulated in the form of ADP and PI to form ATP through substrate level phosphorylation, oxidative phosphorylation, blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
She stopped having salt, which is also a stimulant. And
oh. All right. Lauren, no, it isn't. It is sodium and chloride. It is not a stimulant. Get the out of here.
She had more carbohydrates.
Covered that.
Balloon like crazy because her metabolic function.
Oh, so she'd balloon like crazy if she had carbohydrates. Good. Well, good thing she's not having any of that.
Have to just totally flip into the other direction. So I'll leave it there.
Good.
Careful who you listen to.
Yep, good. Careful who you listen to. That includes you.
Including me, I guess. Woo woo.
Yes, good. Self-awareness is always good.
You know, I got some 1,000 subscribers, so I must be paid by the big sugar conspiracy.
No, I don't think that at all. I must be paid by Big Me, right? No, I don't get paid by any institution. That's not, and I don't really want to be, ever. Offer me a good enough deal. Sell me on it, and then maybe. But, because I can always trust myself to not actually be compromised. That's really what it's about. And to actually be bought. That's not happening. But, anyway. Cool. Yeah, so let's continue.
I'll leave it there, you guys. Please leave your comments, your questions, your...
Well, I left my comments here, so I don't really have any questions.
Ants in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.
No, probably not. But, you know what? Let me go ahead and look at her channel to see if she's still uploading. She is still uploading. Well, she's still making videos. I actually think that's good to see. I like constant activity. It's always sad when you look at a channel and you see that they're not making videos anymore. I don't know. I just like, it's sad. It's sad. So anyway, yeah. So eat a species appropriate, species specific diet for your speciation. That being Homo sapiens sapien, which is a diet that consists primarily of muscle meat and the fat associated with that of what seems to be large ruminant animals with added fat in the forms of butter, tallow, lard, suet, and ghee. Not to say that that's ancestrally consistent. We're looking at a good approximation to it because of our modern context. And added salt to taste and water, transitioning slowly over the course of like 6 to 8 weeks or so. Change 1 or 2 foods a week here and there. Maybe 1 food a week, maybe 2 foods a week. Just do it that way, or else I think you risk problems. So anyway, with that being said, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Subscribe to me if you haven't already. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'm not really sure what you're doing. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Buy my book, Contrainidicated, if you haven't already. A closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a century. If you have not bought that book already. Also, subscribe to the Patreon if you haven't already to gain access to 1 week early uploads, ad-free content, uncensored content, loads of antiquated videos from before I was ever a public figure, loads of Patreon exclusive videos from whenever I was doing that once a week or so, and also an exclusive Discord server if that is something that you're into, for my tier 3 members specifically. And also, once again, just to finalize, if you have not signed up to be a member of the Carnivore Certification Program, now's your time to do so. Now is your time to do so. Make authority mean something. Help combat these inane coaches online that don't have any idea what they're talking about. Any idea. And you know what? Finally, as I stated earlier in the video, the link on the bottom of the screen. What is that link? Well, that is a link that will bring you to an amazing site with amazing products from an amazing brand known as Cerule. If you purchase product through that link, you will get a permanent percentage discount and permanent free shipping when signing up for monthly deliveries. And if you email me behind the scenes at edgoki@pm.me, I can tell you how to earn those products for free. Because who in their right mind wouldn't want that? But, of course, before buying any product at all, including, yes, these ones, got a few here, I wouldn't recommend doing that at all until you actually learn about the products. So fortunately for you, I have a video linked in the top right corner of the screen, or not. Refer to the description below to find the video if it's not up there because of how many videos I've already cited in this video. That is a complete video explanation of what these products are, what those products are, who should take them, why you should take them, when to take them, etc., etc. And I'll also further migrate to the description below to find a video that I did on these products in further detail, as well as the company of Cerule itself, which I think is incredibly important if you are willing to make a contribution to the company via a purchase. So with that being said, join me next time when we are reacting to more misinformation. And look, I do want to say at the very end of this, I don't like punching downwards, and I don't want it to look like I was punching downwards. But information is information, and misinformation is misinformation. So I mean this with all due respect to Lauren. No hard feelings. So catch you in the next one. Till then.